How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Oh, let's it's
It's
a new
so
day. and we're
natural.
having
It's
fun.
a very natural conversation we're having here.
Things
How you guys been since our last episode of Johnny Mnemonic? It's been really
and stuff.
Dolph Lundgren converted me to Christ.
because of this movie. because of this movie. All right, let's get on. Let's do this, fellas.
All right.
All right. Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock, the podcast exploring the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. We do all the research so that you don't have to. And this is the last podcast you'll ever need about Johnny Mnemonic. And I want to get online. I need a computer. I'm Gary Horde, one of your hosts.
I am co-host Justin Bishop.
And I'm Todd A. Davis. Thank you for joining us for the second episode in our series Virtual Insanity, the cyber thrillers of 1995.
All right. So in our last episode, we talked about the beginnings of Johnny Mnemonic and all the backstory on Johnny Mnemonic, and it was made pretty clear that Robert Longo and William Gibson's vision for the film had been compromised. For starters, they had envisioned the film as an avant-garde, low-budget, black and white satire that would have been bound for the art house circuit, but for various reasons, most of them financial concerns that brought in investors from all over the world, the film began to turn into something else until, before they knew it, they were making a movie for a major Hollywood studio with a well-known actor in the lead.
Basically, they were trying to upload this movie for $1.5 million, but the actual package was $26 million. And then they took it anyway, and now it was seeping. And
Now the final product is brain seepage.
Yeah.
Well, Longo has had no qualms about talking about his frustrations surrounding the production of the film in the 3 decades since its release. And while the shoot itself was difficult and often frustrating thanks to studio overreach, his trials on Johnny Mnemonic went into overdrive once the film entered post-production. You see, just as Johnny Mnemonic entered post-production in the summer of 1994, something fortuitous happened. A previous movie that Keanu Reeves had filmed was released and became a massive hit. So while, Reeves, he was known. People knew who he was. He was a well-known guy at the time. He had been in a few big movies before, the Bill and Ted movies, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. It was Jan de Bont's speed that turned him into an A-list movie star. So suddenly, TriStar Pictures had stars and, let's be honest, dollar signs in their eyes.
Well, it's hard to remember, I guess, or if for those who don't know, Speed basically turned Keanu Reeves from the whoa guy to like the oh shit, this guy could carry a blockbuster guy.
Yeah.
So he
like
one
Speed
minute
was
he's
huge, a huge deal.
yeah, like 1 second he's like in San Dimas and phone booths and stuff, and then the next minute he's fighting terrorists and he's a badass, and like a career pivot that is like a once in a lifetime career pivot, unless you're Nicolas Cage, where it happens every 6 months. But it's
but I mean, he had done high profile stuff before, like we said. I mean, or even Point Break, which
I was about to ask, when was Point Break?
Point Break was like 91, 92, so it was before this. But he's also sort of like playing second fiddle to Patrick Swayze, because let's be honest, anyone who's in a movie with Patrick Swayze is playing second fiddle.
That's true.
Except maybe Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's the only one who could carry himself well enough that some women are watching Roadhouse for sexy grandpa Sam Elliott. So.
Oh yeah. But but Speed was bigger than anything he'd ever done. I mean,
It grossed $350 million on a $30 million budget, I think is what I read.
insane.
And,
One of the biggest movies of the 90s of 1994, certainly.
And even Dracula, for what it's worth, like people make fun of his accent in Dracula, but like I don't think that movie got like shit on or overall panned.
No,
Yeah,
I think that movie did fairly well, and I think it's a masterpiece. Honestly, I love that movie. I don't necessarily think Keanu's the best casting for the role, but the movie itself is, I think it's gorgeous. I think it's a great movie. So as originally planned, Johnny Mnemonic would have received a kind of a low stakes February release, when kind of that in between award season and summer season where a lot of like smaller movies have a chance to make some money. And it's kind of perfect for an oddball science fiction satire with no huge stars in it. But now they had a huge star in it. They had a hot commodity on their hands with Keanu Reeves. So TriStar wanted to capitalize on that, but also, as it happened, they found themselves with a gap in their summer movie schedule.
I want to ask about this gap, the February release date. Is that really a thing? Is that still a thing nowadays? Because I thought that window was getting narrower and narrower and narrower.
Yeah, I'd say that January and February are still sort of low stakes release months. Now, it used to be kind of all the way up to freaking May, and the movie season didn't really start till May. Now it's more like March. But January, February, even now, I would say are kind of like lower stakes. Now, they're not like dumps like they used to be. They used to be like when studios would kind of dump a movie that they thought would die otherwise. That's
when they're saying like we know this was a mistake now, but we already spent.
But we still got to put
it
it out. Yeah,
Yes.
That's not really the case as much anymore. There are like legit good movies that are released in February and January, but they're still usually ones that are not expected to be like box office.
It's not when people are going to go out the most to see something.
Right.
And so, but now if you're in the situation where you've got Keanu Reeves in a movie right after Speed came out and blew up like it did, you don't dump it in a graveyard of February.
Right.
You need that shit to be like top of your list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they've got Keanu, so they want to capitalize on his star power, especially while he's hot. And like I said, they've got a gap in their summer movie schedule. And because they had planned for their big summer movie, their big blockbuster for 1995 to be Stephen Frears' Mary Riley, which is a horror film starring Julia Roberts about a woman who works as a maid for Dr. Henry Jekyll, as in, Jekyll and Hyde. That movie itself has a pretty dramatic production history. It started with Roman Polanski as the director, bounced from him to Tim Burton. Tim Burton quit the film because he was pissed about how his producer, who was also a producer on Mary Riley, was handling Ed Wood. Anyway, it's a whole thing that we don't really have time to get into today.
Can we go ahead and add that to the roulette wheel?
I don't know. It's not a great movie.
I was going to say, I think that I had a lobotomy because of Mary Riley, because I forgot that movie even existed until today. But yeah, it was like passed around Hollywood like a volleyball or something. It's so stupid. It's I don't know. That's like, now that it came back up, I remember like, did that kill Julia Roberts' career for a while?
I don't know. I don't think it did, but I think that what happened, if I'm remembering correctly, because it was very different from what she normally did. And it's very serious. She's got that like winning smile.
Yeah.
Julia Roberts, that's like one of those like features that like will always define her, is her smile. And she doesn't really smile in that movie. So what happened, from what I remember, was that it didn't really kill her career, but it was like, you don't get to do movies where you don't smile. Like,
did you just do the thing to Julia Roberts where you're like, hey honey, why don't you smile?
I didn't do that. I'm saying that's what America did.
Okay.
All of America. The patriarchy just.
But I do like
patriarchy.
vaguely remember it being a discussion that like part of the reason that Mary Riley didn't do well was because Julia Roberts was playing such a serious, unsmiling role. I remember that being a reason that people gave for the movie's failure, and not just because it's fucking boring. Which is my recollection of it, but it's been 20 years at least.
Can it just be a bad movie? Like, I don't know.
But it's Malkovich as Jekyll and Hyde. Like,
it should be.
I don't doubt I don't doubt that it's part of the story, but that really feels like some dude in like a CNN anchor who's like, you know what the problem is?
She
Is
didn't
she
smile
just
enough.
smile,
Yeah.
you know? Hey, honey, why don't you smile some?
Yeah.
Maybe you get some bucks from Hollywood.
Well, anyway, so what happened was all of this drama behind the scenes on Mary Riley meant that the film's planned shoot date got pushed back for like a year, which left TriStar without a big summer movie during blockbuster season. Now, you may be asking yourself, why did TriStar think Mary Riley was going to be a big blockbuster? And that is a question that I do not have an answer for, because nothing. Because nothing about that movie, except for the inclusion of Julia Roberts, who was obviously a huge movie star, nothing about it screams blockbuster. Like it's a serious gothic horror movie, like a chamber. It's. I don't know why they thought this was going to be a big blockbuster. It's a very weird thing, but that's what they were. That's what they were putting all their chips in on. Then they're like, oh shit, we don't have anything. So we've got this Johnny Mnemonic movie though that all of a sudden we've got a movie star in the role. So. They've got
Then they what? Then they walked on set and they're like, "Oh, there's a cyborg dolphin."
well, this is the movie's already been shot by this point. This is like right up as the movie's wrapping up. All this is happening because Speed didn't come out until the summer of 1994, and this wrapped in May of 1994. So this is like all happening as the movie's already shot and wrapping up, but they're going into actually editing and all this stuff. So
Okay, so they're like, "Oh God, at least we have Keanu. Thank God." And then they play it and they're like, "Oh
Wait.
man, there's like a fucking cyborg dolphin and Dolph Lundgren's walking around talking about Jesus and murdering people with a crucifix knife. It's gonna be a rough day in the office."
so well, their thinking was, hey, we've got Keanu Reeves, who at this point is a proven bankable movie star in the lead role. Now we see Johnny Mnemonic as a potential summer blockbuster. So TriStar moves its release date from February to a much more competitive Memorial Day weekend, kicking off the summer movie season with Johnny Mnemonic. So at this point, the studio sees Johnny Mnemonic as a real investment. They expect it to be a big moneymaker, but they're not going to let this Robert Longo guy, whoever he is, turn in some artsy fartsy non-commercial film. They want a movie, not a film, one made for mass consumption in shopping mall multiplexes all across America. So unfortunately for Longo, this meant that the studio was going to start meddling with the film even more than they already had. The editor who had worked on the film, who was a Canadian, by the way, another Canadian, he was a longtime David Cronenberg collaborator, Ron Sanders. We talked about him. I mean, most of the movies we talked about during our Cronenberg series were edited by Ron Sanders, as well as stuff after that. Now, anyone who's familiar with Cronenberg's work knows that Sanders has a very specific editing style. Like those Cronenberg movies have they have a very specific vibe to them. He doesn't do these showy, quick-cutting action scenes. His editing has a specific feel to it that adds a sort of off-putting, dreamlike quality to Cronenberg's films that you can't really detect in most other directors' films. I think it's part of his editing, I think, is part of what gives Cronenberg's films the feel that they have. And presumably it was that same otherworldly quality that Longo was seeking when he hired Sanders. But once TriStar decided that this movie was going to be a capital B blockbuster, they got rid of Sanders and they brought in their own editor, someone who, in Longo's words, didn't get it at all.
I was reading this and I was like, man, if you want a fast-paced sci-fi action movie, the last person that you're gonna get is the guy who made Videodrome.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like a fever dream and a broken VCR. It's like, this is, I don't know. It's like, it would be really good to like edit a Fast and Furious movie is like Terrence Malick. Like, what have we got?
Now, I'm not sure who this replacement editor was. Whoever it was, they're not credited on the film. Sanders still receives credit, but the final product is not Sanders' work, according to both Longo and Gibson. They have talked about this in multiple interviews. In Gibson's words, this mystery editor took what was a very funny, very alternative piece of work and very unsuccessfully chopped and cut it into something more mainstream. The resulting edit trimmed about 30 minutes of narrative in order to focus on the film's action sequences and stunts. I even read somewhere that the studio actually had Vic Armstrong, the second unit director, go and film additional action sequences to cut into the film. So some of the action sequences here weren't in Longo's original cut at all, but were added afterwards. Like they threw more money at the film to do reshoots for second unit stuff so that the movie would be more action packed. They also took Reeves's nihilistic character, which, I mean, he still comes across as nihilistic in the film, but apparently was more so originally. They kind of sanded his edges down by cutting some of his dialogue and things like that to try to make him appear more likable. A lot of Gibson's trademark cyberpunk slang was trimmed down or simplified in ADR in order to make the dialogue more palatable to broader audiences. And one of the biggest victims of this editing job was Dolph Lundgren's character, the street preacher, which is ironic considering he was only in the movie because the studio insisted on it. But then when they saw the final product, they didn't like it. He originally had a scene where he was in his church. I think this is how he was introduced in the film. He was in his church, buck naked, preaching to a congregation of women, all of whom were afflicted with NAS, the disease of the film. He delivers what Gibson described as a bombastic, faux Sterling-esque, literally balls out sermon on the virtues of post-humanity. It came off sort of like Fabio as the Jesus you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. It rocked. Hilarious. So Sony cut it.
Gibson says he wrote that scene as a nod to he has a trilogy called Sprawl, and it was something about that, like dark satire, and he had like it was supposed to be a fun scene, but like the message was there or something too. And then I think it was him that said in an interview I read that TriStar like feared the backlash from religious groups or something.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. That's I've read two different interviews where Gibson said that, where he said that it was cut because the studio was worried about it offending the religious right.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just picturing Dolph buck ass naked and like
Balls out.
shaky nos chicks, just like I don't know.
And in case there's any theologians still listening to this,
Why would any theologians be listening to this?
you never know. We dive deep, and I can't defend that. Anyway, Dolph Lundgren actually does quote some scripture. It's Isaiah 28:7-8. In case anybody wanted to look that up,
in the final film,
he quotes it when he walks into the bar.
I mean, in the cut that we have. No, you're not talking about the deleted scene.
Yeah.
Okay.
He walks into the bar, and then basically he's using this scripture to basically describe the bar, and the bartender's like, yeah, you should have seen it last night, or you should have seen it earlier, or something like that. But yeah, that is actual scripture, Isaiah 28:7-8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fun fact.
It's we'll put some we'll put some air quotes around fun.
It's a fact.
It is a fact.
Now, one thing of note, I think, in that quote from Gibson is that he describes the scene as hilarious. And Gary, you even mentioned that it was, written as a satire. And that's something that both Gibson and Longo say a lot about their original vision for the film, that they had intended it to be funny and to be a satire. In one interview that I read with Gibson, he said that Longo, quote, shot the script that I wrote, which I was happy with. The tragedy with Johnny Mnemonic is that we shot an ironic, broadly comic action film that at some level was supposed to be about bad science fiction movies. We were not trying to make a blockbuster mainstream adventure film starring Keanu Reeves.
That's, that piggybacks on something I just noticed I had jotted down here too. There was an interview with Ron Sanders in a 96, was a Cinema Papers interview. He talks about in that he says he had the completed like full cut of Johnny Mnemonic before TriStar yanked him off the project, and that he had worked really hard knowing that Gibson and Longo had this like dark humor that they wanted with the whole thing, and that they had this like avant-garde idea behind all of the shots, and that the studio kept coming in and saying like faster, louder. And they just kept doing it to him. But he like did one on his own that he knew he had done that was like everything he felt like they were looking for.
Right. Well, and you see a little bit of that humor still come through in the final film. So I would love to see the original version of this. I would kill to see the original cut of this movie like with Ron Sanders editing, without the added action sequences, with everything that Longo and Gibson had intended. Because there are some moments where you can kind of see it peek through. Like there's that scene where Johnny and what's her name, Jane?
Yeah,
What's her name?
Jane.
Jane, where they come to heaven, and you've got the two low techs up in the watchtower, like, and they're like going back and forth with this like kind of funny banter, and then accidentally drop the flaming car bomb onto
Right.
Johnny. Like that's a funny scene. Like it's clearly intentionally funny, and I imagine more stuff like that throughout the film because that scene also leads right into Keanu's room service scene, which is also very funny. And apparently, Dolph Lundgren's character was originally like he had all kinds of stuff. Like Longo's even talked about him in interviews. Like based on things you've seen Dolph Lundgren do in the past, you don't expect him to be good at comedy, but he was actually like really funny in this movie. And it's a shame that we cut out so much of his stuff because by cutting out all of the funny stuff that he did, with what you have left, he just looks like a bonehead. He just looks like an idiot. And it makes Dolph Lundgren look bad because they cut out what showed the full performance. So the film's music also went through a few changes during post-production. Again, kind of in an effort to make it more mainstream. Originally, Longo had tapped an industrial band called Black Rain to create the film's score. Black Rain had worked with Gibson in the past on the Neuromancer audiobook. They did the music for the audiobook for that. They went so far as to write and record music for Johnny Mnemonic, but they did so before a single frame of the film was shot, instead basing their score on the short story. They just read that and was inspired by that. That music was ultimately not used in the film, but it was released as an album, which was titled 1.0 and released later in 1995. I listened to it. It sounds like an industrial album from 1995 that was used to score Johnny Mnemonic. That's all I can say.
Well, I mean,
it
you
certainly
said it
does.
to me. You said it to me, and I was listening to it, and like, while I think 95 me would have enjoyed everything more. Like me sitting down now, I'd never get down with like I just need to throw on KMFDM or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But the I was listening to that album, and I was like, it's less generic. It feels like to
Yeah.
me than how like this. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the Johnny Mnemonic score, as it is, feels like like a shitty Sega Genesis game or something. Like
Yeah.
it just, like the soundtrack to it. So I feel like they kind of fucked the score a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that one, I don't know that would have worked because it was done as not to the film. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, once the film was in post, they tapped Canadian film composer Michael Dana to score it. But again, Sony and TriStar stepped in, and they threw Dana's music out. So he had actually scored the film to the film like a normal production. They threw his music out, and they hired Terminator 2 composer Brad Fiedel to create a whole new synth-heavy score, which is not bad, and it's not nearly as good as this Terminator 2 score, which I think is fantastic. It's a little more, like you said, a little more generic, but they actually kept Dana's music, and it's used in the Japanese release of the film, so it is still out there. And then they, of course, released this whole like original motion picture soundtrack of songs by like Stabbing Westward and Orbital and Helmet, and of course the Rollins band has a track on there because I'm sure that was probably in Henry Rollins' contract.
Right,
He gets
right.
a song. He gets
They
a
probably
song.
did.
It's a very
Did-
1995 ass soundtrack, though. I'll tell you that.
Here's a little gem though that I did see. That Black Rain album it was like in Wired or something. They were saying that it became like kind of a cult hit among like cyberpunk fans, that they kind of dug that, and some tracks from that album were used to promote Hackers later.
Really?
So they'll use it in like the trailers and stuff for
How about that?
Hackers.
That's pretty cool. Huh.
Wow.
So the studio's doing all of this stuff, making all of these changes and tweaking all of this stuff because they're determined to turn Johnny Mnemonic into a hit. They even went so far as to try to change the film's title, suggesting something simpler like Johnny Gets His Gun. Now, listen, guys, I think Johnny Mnemonic is a bad title for a movie.
Yeah.
It's a bad title, and it may have honestly contributed to the film's box office performance because audiences are not going to know what the fuck mnemonic means or how to pronounce it. They don't know what that means. And I honestly get the decision to try to change the title on this, but is Johnny Gets His Gun really the best that we could do? Like,
No,
come on,
no,
there had to be
come on.
something.
Depending on the movie, like I don't hate that idea as a title, but
But for this,
for this,
it sounds like a
I can't-
Western.
I was gonna say it
Yeah,
evokes
it
some
sounds-
serious
it does sound
Western
like a
vibes.
Western,
Yeah.
Anyway, one scene in the film that was added, or at least maybe like beefed up at TriStar's insistence, was the climactic virtual reality sequence where Johnny has to hack his own brain. Obviously, that was written into the plot, but it's a very long sequence in the film, and I don't think it was originally conceived to be quite that long. It is easily the film's most dated scene. It is the one that tells you the most that this movie was made in 1995. But at the time of the release, the effects used to create it were considered groundbreaking. This sequence was produced by Sony Pictures Imageworks, so obviously it's in-house at Sony, under the supervision of visual effects producer George Merkert. Now, Merkert was a longtime fan of Gibson's work, and in the early 90s, he had actually produced a test visualization of Gibson's cyberspace based on Gibson's writing for James Cameron. And I don't know what that was for. I tried to find what James Cameron was working on that he would need this for. Maybe he was working on Neuromancer or something. Who knows? I could not find that. So if you know, please drop us a line. James Cameron, if you're listening, please let us know what you were working on.
What else is that guy doing?
Merkett had obviously dipped his toe into this world before, so getting the chance to do this for Johnny Mnemonic officially was exciting for him. And he brought on a visual effects supervisor named John Nelson, who was an ILM vet who had worked on James Cameron's Terminator 2. He specifically, I think, worked on the scene where the T-1000 gets his head split, by the shotgun, and then it kind of like molds back together. It's a great scene, but I think that was like one of the scenes that he was in charge of. So the guy's got some talent, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, the studio gave so much attention to this scene, presumably so that they could market the film as one that showcased the future of virtual reality and internet technology. Like, this movie's at the cutting edge. Because TriStar was really banking on the newfound popularity of the internet to boost the film's box office. And one way that they hoped to create hype was by crafting a marketing campaign that zeroed in on computer users. So while there were old school marketing tie-ins, there was a Johnny Mnemonic pinball machine, for example, which I have played, and it is pretty fun. It's a pretty good pinball machine.
It's a collector's item now.
Yeah. But they've got it. I want to say I played it at the Appalachian Pinball Museum up in North Carolina, I think. But it's a cool game. But that was one of kind of the more, I guess you'd say, traditional tie-ins, the pinball machine. But one of the key components of the campaign that was a little more innovative was a tie-in interactive CD-ROM game, which was created by an offshoot of Propaganda Films, which, of course, we discussed on a couple of episodes in the series, but most in depth during our David Fincher series last year because he worked for Propaganda Films. He was one of the co-founders, I believe. Now, this video game, and it's called Johnny Mnemonic, the Interactive Action Movie, is the full name of the game. Sony invested an additional $3 million into this game, which had a script written by Douglas Gayton and John Blatton and directed by Gayton. The game itself was a point-and-click adventure game. Have you know the type of game I'm talking about, where you've got like pre-filmed live action sequences?
Yeah.
There's not really like a lot of other
not a lot of skill required to play these.
Yeah, you're just like making choices and clicking and
picking the right option. There was a horror game I used to love called Phantasmagoria, where it was just like a movie, but an interactive movie.
So that's basically what this is, and so it's like live action scenes that were filmed for it. But so basically, like you said, it's an interactive movie. So because they had originally planned on shooting this in Toronto, but because the movie kind of got delayed and it was over schedule, they ended up filming this in Los Angeles instead of in Toronto. And it features a completely different cast. No Keanu Reeves in this movie. The cast here includes a guy named Christopher Garton as Johnny, former LA Lakers basketball player Kurt Rambis, Penthouse Magazine's 1993 Pet of the Year Julie Strain, and as J-Bone, Mr. Isaac Hayes.
Now, Justin, I have a question. Who's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks?
Oh, that's Shaft.
Oh, okay. Now, Gary, who's the man that would risk his neck for his brother man?
Well, Shaft.
Oh,
John Shaft.
oh, okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page there.
You damn right. Yo, I heard that Shaft was one bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
I'm just talking about Shaft.
We can dig it.
Really glad we went with this direction instead of like chocolate salty balls from South Park.
Oh, damn.
It is Mother's
That
Day,
made me
Justin.
do the Corey Feldman thing where I just like hit my teeth on the mic. That's good.
Luckily, you're only on camera for paying customers here on Cinema Shock.
My teeth are
Just
still
like
here.
your mom.
It's Mother's Day. Do not talk about my mother on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
So another piece of the marketing here on Johnny Mnemonic was this online scavenger hunt that Sony put together. I couldn't find a lot of details on it, but it was to get people to scour the internet for clues and things like that. But the grand prize was $20,000. They also arranged online Q&As with William Gibson, who ironically had never been on the internet before these sessions. He was just like super awkward, didn't know how to use it. Like the guy who invented cyberspace had never been on the internet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that I found an article with Next Generation from 1996, and they said that the Johnny Mnemonic CD-ROM game was a $3 million turd sold under 10,000 copies. It was like wiping your ass with a gold bar, apparently. The Wired from 95, they said that Gibson's online Q&As were such a shit show that the dude typed slower than a grandma on dial-up. Fans thought he was trolling them because he couldn't type fast enough. And that $20,000 scavenger hunt, nobody ever won it because their website kept crashing so hard.
Wait, so can we cash in? Can we go do clues and cash in?
Is it still happening?
Technically, it's still happening. TriStar thought this was like their ticket to internet glory, and no, it's just a digital landfill.
Yeah, a year after this, the Blair Witch team would show them how to really do internet marketing.
Right.
But with a lot of their marketing focused on the World Wide Web, which is what we used to call the internet back in the day. The World Wide Web. That's what the WWW stands for. Did you guys know that?
Wait, what?
Fun fact. And we wore an onion on our belt, which was the fashion at the time. Sorry. So with so much of their focus on this like internet marketing, studio executives assumed that the internet would provide turbocharged word of mouth. They were very, very wrong about that. When Johnny Mnemonic was released on May 26, 1995, it opened to a pretty pitiful box office take of just $6 million. Now, to be fair, it was up against some pretty stiff competition, which included new releases like Casper and Braveheart, both of which went on to be blockbusters, plus heavy-hitting holdovers that had already been out for a couple of weeks, like Die Hard with a Vengeance and Crimson Tide. So it's a hell of a box office to be thrown into.
Yeah.
Well, in the end, the film grossed just $19 million in North America. Not great, $26 million budget before you throw the $3 million at the video game, all the other marketing stuff, who knows the final cost and all of that.
Feels like some executive was probably chain smoking in his office that weekend and wondering if he should fake his death. Like
Yeah. They're like, I told them to put more buses in this, which is a thing that actually happened after Speed. They're like, where's the bus? Why is there not? Put a bus in this?
Jesus, it's like early AI. Like
Yeah.
they just don't like studio execs are just like, what worked about this? Was it just that there was a bus?
There was a bus.
People like buses.
Keanu, if Keanu's in it, there's got to be a bus.
Yeah,
that was their
stupid.
thinking. That's their dumbass thinking. But then the movie didn't do well, so maybe they were like, if they'd only put a goddamn bus in it,
That would have saved it.
it made $300 million.
It would have saved it from this financial face plant that they just did.
Yeah. So whatever it was, audiences were disinterested, and critics, well, most of them just thought the movie was straight up dumb. Like that's kind of the gist of most of the reviews that you read. Writing for the New York Times, Karen James said the movie was a disaster in every way. Variety's Todd McCarthy called it high-tech trash. Over in Entertainment Weekly, Owen Gleiberman gave the film a C- rating, so not a failure, but a C-, and described it as slack and derivative. Those reviews were pretty rough. But there's one that I really enjoyed, and it was from Roger Ebert, the Chicago Sun-Times. He gave it, I think, 2.5 stars, which is not, the worst, but not a positive review by any means. But he did kind of give it like a backhanded compliment, I guess you could say. He wrote that the film was, quote, one of the great goofy gestures in recent cinema, a movie that doesn't deserve 1 nanosecond of serious analysis, but has a kind of idiotic grandeur that makes you almost forgive it. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that review. Now, I'm certainly not going to try to defend Johnny Mnemonic as some sort of lost masterpiece that deserves reevaluation. I do think that it's better than a lot of the reviews at the time suggested, and I do think that the final product is very compromised. I mean, like I said before, I would kill to see the cut of the film that better reflects what Longo and Gibson wanted to do, but even more recent interviews with Longo seem to indicate that that is never going to happen. Like he has no interest in it.
Mm.
But I do have fond memories of this film. I remember renting the movie in middle school, watched it at a buddy's house. We both loved it. We especially loved Dolph Lundgren's character, who we thought was hilarious, probably even more so because we both came from kind of like evangelical households. So the sacrilegious nature of his character kind of made us feel like we were getting away with something, I think.
Yeah.
We just thought it was funny. But so I've always had fond memories of this movie since then. Where do you guys remember when you first saw Johnny Mnemonic, when you were first encountered Johnny Mnemonic in your life? Like, is this a movie that you watched growing up in high school or anything, middle school, high school?
I don't think I saw it until much, much later.
Yeah?
It just, for whatever reason, just didn't cross. I didn't.
It
cross
wasn't a
paths
big
with
hit or anything. I don't know
Yeah.
how I came across it. I probably just randomly rented it, honestly.
it. Yeah.
The
Probably saw
biggest,
Keanu Reeves because I'd seen Speed.
Mm.
yeah, the biggest memory I have of it is just that I have it on VHS still, and it's an orange cassette, like it's
Like the
neon
Nickelodeon ones,
orange.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I bet that's worth some money.
I just remember that. I don't remember like seeing it in the theater or anything. I feel like I just like randomly rented it or something.
Yeah, I think
and
that's what I
watched
did.
it. And I loved it back in the day. I've always had like a fond memory of it. I don't think it's good.
But do
I
you
don't-
enjoy it? That's what
I mean,
matters. Like I don't
think,
believe in guilty pleasures. I believe that if you like something, you like it. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think that even if you can admit that it's bad or there are bad elements of it, but you enjoy watching it regardless,
I'm gonna be
then you
honest.
shouldn't be guilty about that. You know what I mean?
No. I'm the same as you. I don't believe in like ironically watching something. I think that I somewhat enjoy it.
Okay.
I don't have like a strong feeling towards it. I think that I somewhat enjoy it, and I think that the somewhat part of it only comes from nostalgia. I think it mainly comes from just remembering it, watching it with my buddy or something, and just the idea of like this is what they thought was going to happen and that sort of thing. I've watched it twice now, and admittedly, I have still not watched the black and white version. So, for whatever that changes. But watching it the times that I have for this episode, I'm like, man, it would have to overcome a lot. Like, I think the acting is pretty bad. And it is a goofy fucking movie. And it kind of like the pacing is so weird. And
The pacing is
so
weird. Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't know that black and white is going to fix that for me. Like, I just don't know. To be honest with you, one of the things that does impress me the most about it is I'm not bothered by the tech of the whole thing. I think most of that's like kind of charming in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And then in a lot of ways, I'm like, it's close enough. It's good.
Yeah.
Like when he gets the iPhone and the gloves
Hmm.
and which is EYE phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but so this is a few years before the iPhone at least. I have a Meta Quest over here. And when he strapped that thing on his face, I'm like, that doesn't look unlike my VR.
Yeah.
And the the images of his hands moving, the Meta Quest like literally has those hands moving. Like your hands are like
Hmm.
digital little weird hands that move and grab things. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I was
Yeah.
like, this is good for the 90s. Like that's kind of a thing we have right now. And so there are little things like that. I mean, obviously they missed out on certain things like I don't know, you got all that shit and you still have a fax machine.
Yeah, and you have a payphone basically. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got video on it, but you're still dialing. There's not a mobile phone in sight.
You have I was gonna say like even when you're dialing on a phone, it's still like real like analog about
Yeah.
the phone or something. None of their TVs are HD and flat
No,
screen.
they're all CRTs. Everything's still a CRT TV.
Yeah, so it's like okay, well you missed a bunch of that, but there are some cool things that I'm like that's close.
Also, the brain busting data storage that Johnny has is a whopping 320 gigabytes, which is like less than what a lot of iPhones have on them now.
Oh yeah. I think I looked it up at one point, and like your brain could store. I mean, not that he's using his whole brain. He like looks like he has like a
He has an
specific
implant. Yeah.
implant for it. But I mean, I don't know. You could get a fucking credit card size solid state drive that
Yeah.
stores like like 10 terabytes for
Right.
nothing. And so the amount he's carrying, he's talking about the Library of Congress, and I'm like, bro, that's not even close.
Yeah.
Like that's um anyway, so there's like some silly technical but that part should be the charming part, honestly. And then just the way I watch Star Trek or something from like the Kirk days. But I don't know. It's the pacing and the acting and Keanu, I know that apparently he went for like a more robotic performance. I thought his performance was going to be that he is part robotic or
Yeah.
something, you know, that I'm like, man, he is so stiff and wooden in this
Yeah.
movie.
But that was
And
like that wasn't bad acting necessarily. It was a choice. Now, was it a good choice? Maybe not.
Yeah.
And would a more experienced director would have had him pull that back a little bit? Probably.
Yeah.
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 Or someone more comfortable with giving direction to
Yeah.
his actors.
Because we've come to love Keanu for being Keanu. So there's a way to make it fun.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And just appreciate him. This just I don't know. I don't think people outside of like us being nostalgic for it. I think this is one of those movies where nostalgia is going to play a huge part. I can't picture like some like 15-year-old
Yeah.
picking this movie and watching it and being like, "Oh, this is great. This is
Yeah.
inspiring." Like
I mean, the nostalgia does play a little bit of role in my enjoyment of it, but part of my enjoyment of it is also that it is campy, and that's part of its charm. That there is sort of a kitsch factor in watching a movie that's trying to predict what technology is going to look like in the then future of 2021 in the case of this movie, and seeing how much it got right, how much it got wrong. That's one thing I like about all of these movies that we're going to be talking about on this series, is seeing like how they thought the future would and technology would turn out. But that's not a reason to watch the movie necessarily. Like, I like a lot of other factors of this movie. I mean, the cast of this movie was almost guaranteed to give it cult film status. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Takeshi Kitano, Udo Kier, Ice-T, Henry Rollins, and Dolph Lundgren. Like, that's like the Avengers of cult movies. Like, let's like just throw all these guys in there. Somebody's going to enjoy this just because they're in there. And I am one of those somebodies. In fact, Dolph Lundgren's one of the things I like most about this movie. I think that's why I kind of wish that I had seen the full scope of this character as originally intended, because I think he's a lot of fun in this. But I still do admit that the movie, has problems. It's silly.
Yeah.
The pacing is weird. The performances are inconsistent, but that doesn't deter my enjoyment. The more I watch this movie, the more I like it. Actually, I've watched it like several times over the last couple years for some reason, uh, because I just keep going back to it because there's something about it that draws me into it. Like you said, Gary, some of the technology it got right, some of it got very wrong. Like the the wide ranging use of fax machines as like a major piece of technology is very off base, obviously for 2021. But what is impressive about it is how prescient the movie's ideas are. See, in the world of Johnny Mnemonic, and this is a testament to William Gibson as a great sci-fi writer and being able to sort of predict the future, which a lot of great sci-fi writers are able to do. In the world of Johnny Mnemonic, the most important thing in the world is data. In this world where everything and everyone seems to be connected by the internet. The internet, which was a thing that people didn't really know much about, especially when this story was written in the 80s. Not to mention when the movie was made in 1995. Like nobody had any idea how big the internet would be in 2021 and beyond. But this movie sort of gets that part right, even though its visualization of the internet's obviously very, very different. But the idea that everyone is so dependent on it, that everything's connected. And let's not forget, this is a movie set in 2021 where big pharma rules, everyone's wearing masks because the world is being devastated by a global pandemic. That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
like that's wild watching it now. And you're like, holy shit. Like that is obviously William Gibson couldn't have predicted COVID or anything, but it's just one of those weird coincidences where you're like, wow, like this is pretty wild. I mean, like Johnny Mnemonic isn't groundbreaking sci-fi, but to me, it is fun and it is audacious, which I think a lot of great sci-fi, I think that's one of my favorite things is when a sci-fi movie or story takes a big swing and genuinely does its best to envision what the future could be like. And while this movie obviously doesn't always hit the target in terms of tech, it gets close enough to constantly stay interesting to me. I for one, I love the aesthetics of the film. I love the set design. I love the costumes. I love the look of the film. And I especially love the black and white version of this film, which we'll discuss here in a minute. So the version of Johnny Mnemonic that was released in the summer of 1995 was obviously not the film that Gibson and Longo wanted to make. They've both spent the years since making it clear that the blame for the final product and its box office failure was that of the studio, who tried to mold the film into something that it was never intended to be. Gibson even went so far as to publish his original screenplay, like as a book. It had the screenplay and the original short story in a book that you could buy. And he did that so that he could explicitly show the differences between what he and Longo intended, what he had written in the screenplay, and what TriStar actually released in theaters. Longo later described the studio heads as complete idiots and called the entire process of making the movie torturous. He even claimed that the production of the film gave him PTSD. And this is probably no surprise, but he never directed another film, opting to return to the art world that he had temporarily abandoned. So this, I mean, you could say the movie killed his career, or you could probably say that he realized that that was not for him. What seems even more likely to me. But despite the unpleasantness of getting the movie made, Gibson, Longo, and Reeves have all remained close friends. Reeves was even made the godfather of Longo's son that was born while making the film, which I think is kind of fun. And despite the trauma that he experienced while making it, Longo decided to revisit Johnny Mnemonic for the film's 25th anniversary, which he celebrated by creating a black and white version of the film that would, at least visually, be closer to the film that he had originally wanted to make. Now, at first, it seems like he just seemed to be doing this for shits and giggles. Like he ripped the movie off of a Blu-ray. He threw a black and white filter over it and was just going to post it on YouTube. That was his big plan for it. But when he told his plans to producer Don Carmody, who was one of the few producers on the film that Longo got along with, Carmody asked to see this black and white version of the movie for himself, and he was impressed with what he saw. So he actually was able to convince Longo to talk to Sony about releasing it officially. And he did that, and Sony sort of unexpectedly agreed to it. And they ended up providing Longo with the film's original footage so that he could do a high quality professional conversion instead of just a low quality Blu-ray rip. And Longo enlisted the movie's original colorist, a guy named Cyrus Stowe, to work on the black and white cut, which is a lot more than just a black and white filter thrown on it. Like they went into it scene by scene, frame by frame, and they regraded the film's color completely. And they created this sort of grainy, moody film that's reminiscent of movies like Eraserhead and Tetsuo the Iron Man. So after hosting sold-out screenings of the film at festivals in 2021, Sony released Johnny Mnemonic in black and white on Blu-ray in August of 2022. And right now, it's like the easiest version of the movie to find on disc, actually. Like it's easier to find than the color version. The color version's out of print, I believe, in America at least. And honestly, for me, I know you watched this version as well, Todd, but for me, this has become one of those instances where this new version of the film has become the definitive version. And it's probably the only one I'll ever want to watch from now on. Like, I just think it looks really cool. It honestly makes this $26 million movie look like a shitty $1.5 million movie. Like they had intended. You know, it's got that grungy punk rock, cyberpunk rock look to it that completely transforms the film. Like sometimes these black and white cuts of movies like this can feel a little gimmicky. But every now and then there's one that comes across like this. The Mist is another one that I would give as an example, where it's clear that like this is how the movie should be seen. And it's not a different cut of the film. It is the same edit, the same performances. So all of those other problems that Longo had with the film are still there, but at least like visually, the look and feel of the movie is a major transformation, honestly. And it really makes some of the things that were problems, like the performances and the some of the special effects, fit a little bit better because the movie looks cheaper. So it makes those performances that sometimes feel like they could come out of a cheap B movie, like they fit better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I recall having seen the color version years and years ago, and it was fun, but in a word, forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get it. Keanu Reeves running around doing stuff. They do the thing they need to do, save the day, roll the credits. End of story. But I was intrigued by the black and white aspect because there's a couple of other things. You mentioned The Mist. I know there's Mad Max, Black and Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really intrigued by this, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to hold off on watching the color version and just watch the black and white version. And this is probably very high in my collection now. Like and for all the reasons that you just mentioned, like it looks fantastic. Every shot in there is wall worthy.
Yeah.
Even I noticed the tight shots on faces. There's one where I think Jane is talking to Ralphie, and she's kind of got her head cocked side.
And that first scene where we meet her in the bar. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, that is a great shot. And it looks fantastic.
And her like dark lipstick looks black in it.
Yeah.
And like there's so much grain in it that I don't know if they added that or if it was apparent in the film before that's just enhanced by the black and white, but it looks grainier.
Yeah.
And then you've got like there's a lot of smoke in this movie, which in the color version makes it just sort of have a weird haziness, but in this it adds so much atmosphere. Like that smoke in the background in black and white, it feels like you're walking through the factories from Eraserhead.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. I also noticed just to complete my thought, there was the tight shot of Jane, but then there was a low angle shot of Johnny walking in the streets. I think this was before he came to Newark, but it's him just walking through the like crowded streets of Beijing. And I was like, this is a dope shot. It looks really good. It also, with the scenes of the virtual reality, it took the fact that it didn't age well, kind of took that away a little bit of just
a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, not completely, but a little bit enough to like keep you on board. It doesn't take you out of the film.
Right.
The cheesy nostalgia 90s special effects of it doesn't take you out of the film when it's in black and white.
Right.
I found myself like locked into every shot, every little mini monologue. Of course, I want room service. Yeah, that one too. But like Henry Rollins as
Hmm.
Spider, talking about everything, like his manicness and like throwing stuff around his shop, like hit more.
Yeah. It's really wild how much just changing the visual look of the film
Yeah.
transforms it
Yeah.
and makes things that didn't play as well in the color one play better
Yeah.
because it just fits the movie better. It
Yeah.
just fits it's like a missing piece. It's like a Rosetta Stone that just unlocks a lot of what this movie's potential was.
Yeah. And the notion that things have to be that the technology is such that, well, movies have to be in color. Not
Hmm.
necessarily.
Right.
Like this is one of those things where it's just kind of like set that notion aside for a minute and watch
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
It is worth every penny. Like
Absolutely. I
put
fully
it
agree.
put it in your collection. Do
Yeah.
yourself a favor. Put it in your collection.
100% agree. I have sort of become obsessed with this movie since
Yeah.
getting the black and white version last year. I think since I bought the black and white version last year, I've watched it like 4 times. And only one of those times was for this podcast.
Oh wow.
I watched it like a month ago before
Oh,
we had even decided we were doing this
oh.
just for fun.
I've already talked it up to at least two or three others who follow me and or the show, and like was like, you gotta see it in black and
Yeah,
white. It's
for real.
incredible.
Yeah, it really is. So over the years, Johnny Mnemonic has gained a modest cult following. It hasn't received like a full-on critical evaluation, although the black and white cut has gotten very good reviews. But it has been embraced by fans of both the cyberpunk genre and folks who, honestly, like me, enjoy a little bit of mid-90s trash. Because I like that's like my sweet spot. Mid-90s trash, whether it's sci-fi, I really like mid-90s like erotic thrillers, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, things like that. Like I love that shit. That's like catnip to me. So next week on the show, we'll be talking about another piece of mid-90s trash, and I say that as a compliment. With the next film in our Virtual Insanity series, I'm very excited about this one because I also rewatched this one recently because there's a fantastic 4K out there that Vinegar Syndrome put out a few months ago. So for our next episode, we are fast forwarding from May to August of 1995 for a movie set in the far-reaching future of 1999, starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. We will be talking about Brett Leonard's Virtuosity.
Nice.
I am very excited to talk about this with you guys. Have either of you seen it?
I
I don't know a lot of people who have seen this movie.
I don't think
I don't think I've seen it.
have.
I've been
Yeah.
obsessed with it since 1995. I adored it back then. I adore it now. So just showing my cards, but I love this movie.
I was gonna say, do you have a copy? Should we get together for a Cinema Shock watch party?
I've got that 4K, man. It's awesome. That 4K.
Well, I just paid Orbit for a super expensive version of that 4K.
That's the only version of that 4K available is that super expensive version, but it is nice. It is very nice. It's worth every penny in my opinion. So we're going to discuss Virtuosity next week. Watch it along with us. It's pretty easy to find. If you don't have that 4K, you can still rent it and stream it and stuff. It's an easy movie to find out there. One of Russell Crowe's first, if not very first, starring role in an American film. So very, very young Russell Crowe. Get to see his bud in it.
Ooh, well, I'm sold now. Worth every penny already.
It's also got what's her name, Kelly Lynch from Roadhouse in it.
Ooh.
Well, definitely worth it now.
You don't get to see her butt.
What's the point?
You still got Roadhouse.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so I guess we're done. I guess we're done with Johnny Mnemonic.
That's it.
Hope you guys enjoyed this sort of new format, 2-episode format for this. Let us know what you think. Hit us up on social media, cinema_shock, and give us your opinion on the new format of the show. We'll see how this goes. We're going to do it at least through this whole series, and if the feedback's good, we might continue to do this going forward. We'll see what happens. And thank you for joining us on this. You guys want to let our listeners know where you can be found on all the things?
At This Is Gary Horn, all spelled out.
I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis on Instagram.
All right. You can find me at Justin_Bishop. Again, the show is at cinema_shock on most of the things. You can find us everywhere. Cinemashock.net. Most of the links to everything else are right there. Discord, merch, CinemaShock Plus. I think that's it, guys. I think we did pretty good on Johnny Mnemonic. I'm pretty happy with it. Until next time.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
Just Johnny has the key. Well, part of the key. You see, the key is actually 3 random images from a television feed used to encrypt the data. The Yakuza have the other half. We're going to need a dolphin to decode the rest.
Really thought that one through.